the name of Fritz Kreisler, who lived from 1875 to 1962. He earned a fortune with his concerts and compositions, but he generously gave most of it away. So when he discovered an exquisite violin on one of his trips, he wasn't able to buy it. Later, having raised enough money to meet the asking price, he returned to the seller, hoping to purchase that beautiful instrument. You know, violins can range from, yung mga nabibili dito, you can buy it for about 4,000. Pero if you really have a very old violin, like yung brand, for example, Stradivarius, that could be in millions, okay? Even in millions of dollars. Anyway, but to his great dismay, yun nga, binalikan ni Kreisler yung violin when he was able to raise the money. He was so disappointed to find out that it has already been sold. Okay? So, to a collector. Alam niyo naman ang collector. It's primarily for display. Diba? So, parang nasasayang siya lalo na nalaman na hindi man napunta sa isang tumutugtog o violinista, pero sa isang collector lang. So Kreisler made his way to this new owner's home and offered to buy the violin. The collector said it had become his prized possession and he would not sell it. Keenly disappointed, Kreisler was about to leave when an idea came to him. Sabi niya, could I play that instrument once more before you keep it to yourself forever? And the permission was granted. And the great virtuoso filled the room with such heart-warming, heart-moving music that the collector's emotions were deeply stirred. Tapos sabi nung collector, I have no right to keep that violin to myself. It's yours, Mr. Kreisler. Take it into the world and let people hear it. So isn't that an amazing story? When a person gets convicted that something that actually belongs to him would be better used if shared with other people. But when I read this phrase, take it into the world, it rings a familiar phrase in the Bible, right? And that is, go into the world. So it's very similar to our text. Namin ko na po yung aking pointer, di ba?
Ay! Wala yung pointer.
Dito yung pointer ko. Nasa bulsa ko po. Anyway. The go into the world verse or verses is known as the Great Commission. And when you think about what it is that we have as Christians, that we have no right to keep to ourselves, I think we would all agree that this precious thing that we have is our relationship with Jesus Christ. And it is something that is meant to be shared to others and not just be kept to ourselves. So today we will be talking about the Great Commission, known as the Great Commission as recorded by Matthew. I am sure that the verses will be very familiar to you. You've heard it so many hundreds of times. Hopefully we gain even more understanding as we study the 3 short verses in this message I will be giving you. I have titled it, however, the Discipleship Mission, and I will explain to you later why. So chapter 28 is the last chapter of Matthew's Gospel, and that's where we have our text. The previous chapter, chapter 27, talks about the trial of Jesus before Pilate and the succeeding crucifixion and death of Jesus on the cross. So chapter 27 is a very dark chapter. Okay? It's a very tragic chapter. Chapter 28 is about the Resurrection Sunday. And it is, in contrast, has a very bright theme in that if you think about the images of chapter 27, for example, when Jesus Christ was crucified, the whole earth, the sky was darkened, remember? But when we look at chapter 28, it is actually from dawn to morning to sunrise, and it just shows a very different theme, a very different atmosphere. If one's about death, chapter 28 is more about life. In fact, chapter 28 also talks about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. You probably remember the story of when the women were looking for the body of Jesus on the tomb. And then, they could not find it. What happened was, an angel appeared to them. Sabi ng angel, do not be afraid, for I know you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. Tapos sabi ng angel, he's not here. He has risen. He, as he has said, come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples. I would like to just ask you to sort of think about that word, go, because it is mentioned several times in this chapter alone. The angel said that go quickly and tell his disciples, he has risen from the dead, and he's going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him. So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid, yet filled with joy, and ran to tell the disciples. Suddenly, it was Jesus himself who met them. Okay? Tapos sabi niya, greetings. He said, they came to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, do not be afraid. Here again, go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me. Okay. So finally the day came when the disciples were in the mountain in Galilee, and when they were gathered, Jesus appeared to all the disciples. There were 11 of them because wala na po si Judas dito. Verse 16 says, then the 11 disciples went to Galilee to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him. But some doubted. Yan ang sabi ni Matthew. So Christianity strongly affirms the resurrection of Jesus from the dead as a historical fact. Christianity holds the truth of the resurrection as the single most important event in history. It is a key faith doctrine that makes sense of the hope that believers in Jesus can look forward to, such as the eternal life or life after death. Doubts about the authenticity of a resurrected Jesus abound even today. Even then, among the disciples, they could not believe even when he already was there in front of them. So, simply because it was hard to believe, it was difficult to believe in a resurrection. Nonetheless, the scriptures affirm that it is true. Now, referring to the Corinthians, Paul also has something to say about it. I'm just laying the foundation here of why it is important for us to realize that this Great Commission is actually very much tied to the resurrection. And Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15, if only for this life we have hope in Christ, we are of all people most to be pitied. But Christ has indeed been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep. It is because of the resurrection that the disciples have a reason to obey the great commandment. Without the resurrection, there is nothing to be shared. There is nothing to say to the world. Okay? However, as Christ was about to ascend to heaven, ito na yung ascension, still chapter 28, He made it clear to the disciples and the believers with them that they had a work to do in the meantime. It was not enough for them to witness the life of Jesus, His death, His miraculous resurrection from the dead. It was not enough for them to see Him ascend into heaven. And just like the story of the violin earlier, it was not enough for them to just keep that experience to themselves. Jesus Christ made it very plain that they have to do something. They have to share that experience with others. They have a mission, a mandate to fulfill, which is recorded in the last verses of the Gospel of Matthew. And these are the last 3 verses. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." Okay? This is Christ's final instructions. Being the final, it bears great importance. It is also called, aside from being called a Great Commission, it is called a mandate. It's marching orders. It is a commandment. It is a mission. Okay? This can also be seen as a great obligation to the rest of the world. Personally, I prefer to call it the discipleship mission. But what exactly is the purpose of this mission? What is it? What is its intended result? Okay? And how is it to be fulfilled or achieved in our day? It is my desire that through this message we will be able to answer such questions, so that personally these verses will have meaning to us personally and not just collectively. So let us now closely examine the 3 verses now. Let's go back again to highlight verse 18. It says here that Jesus came to them and says, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me." What does that mean? Well, all authority. So He has all the power? Yeah. So is He commanding us now? In other words, I have all authority, therefore you go and make disciples. Is that what it is saying? Okay. We can see at the outset that Jesus is stating the very foundation on which the mandate is supported. It is supported or covered by His sovereign authority and power as the resurrected Jesus Christ. Okay. So this mandate carries with it the authority. The authority here is not so much as a power over those without authority. Hindi lang siya parang, alam niyo, yung commanding officer, like a general, giving a command to the lesser in rank simply because he has the authority of the general. Hindi ho ganon. Okay? It is not simply a command to do something. It is not an authority to make us obey. Rather, the authority here serves as a covering or an assurance of success as we obey. So Jesus is not wielding His authority over the disciples. He is in fact reassuring them that by His power, that they will be encouraged in fulfilling the Great Commission because He has all the power and authority. He is like saying, don't doubt, you will not fail, I will make you succeed Because I have all the authority and the power in heaven and earth to make you succeed. So that's what it means. That is why in verse 19, the word therefore comes in. In other words, because of that authority, that covering of authority and assurance of success, the word therefore makes sense. Okay? It's not just like saying, oh, sige, punta po kayo. You preach the gospel and all that. Hindi. I have given you my assurance that you will succeed, and therefore go. So He's paving the way for success. It's not like you go and let's see if you will be successful. No. The authority actually makes that assurance true. And it says here, go and make disciples of all nations. This is the core of this Great Commission, or the Discipleship Commission. It is to make the disciples. So the Discipleship mission makes all believers witnesses and messengers wherever they are. Okay? So that was So the mission makes all believers witnesses and messengers. The action word or verbs are very important in identifying what is important in a verse. So when we read our Bibles, usually when we need to look at yung mga action verbs, because usually those are instructions and those are the important words. This verse has two verbs, and as a result, many Christians think that these are two separate commands. One is to go, and the other is to make disciples. Actually, this is just one command. The going is towards making disciples. And the making of disciples is dependent on the going. I believe that it is important to point out that it is important for us to point this out because many sincere Christians put so much emphasis on this first word, okay, going, not knowing that it is really connected to the making of disciples. That's why many believe that in order to fulfill this commission, they have to go. It doesn't matter what it is that they're going to, where they're going to, as long as they go. But many think that to go is to leave the country. In order to fulfill the Great Commission, many Christians believe they have to go out of the country in the same manner that Abraham was asked to go. Okay? This is different. Remember, if that were true, if going means we go out of the country, go to a different culture and all that, then tanungin po natin ang sarili natin, sino maiiwan dito? Sino maiiwan? Sino maiiwan na magdidisipulo sa mga Pilipino? Halimbawa na, somebody else? Does that make sense? No? Irrespective of family obligations, work obligations, you have to go. Take note that it is not going to all nations, but disciples of all nations. It's not go to all nations, remember, but make disciples of all nations. That's very, very different, and I need to make that very clear. The original disciples, including Paul, never reached all continents of the world back then. Did they fail? If that is our interpretation, they failed. Okay? But we can see that 2,000 years after Christianity is still spreading all over the world. Okay? And we know also that the Earth's population is still growing. So this instruction is never going to be finished in our lifetime, if we can look at it that way. It is a continuing process. Discipleship is not going to be done at a certain period in time, but it is going to continue. Remember the instruction of God to Adam and Eve when they were in the Garden of Eden? Go forth and multiply. And when you come to think about it, that's when God really meant it, maybe physically, multiplication and having more people, humanity on earth. But we can probably look at it in terms of us today and apply it in a different way. In other words, go and multiply yourselves. Go and multiply your being a disciple. So go forth and multiply applies to us in a spiritual sense. Also, I'd like to point out that some Bible scholars think of the word go can also be translated as you go or in your going. Okay, scholars can accept. They understand that could also mean that way. But remember, most scholars still retain this go. That's why our translations usually have this go. It's not using in going, wherever you're going, or as you go. But the most important thing is because this is very critical to me, I think that we need to understand. Go and make disciples is just one. Alam niyo yung go and make some bread. Diba? Go and make a careful search of the child. Pag sinabi mong go, incomplete ho yun. Go, okay. I'll go, but where? What defines that go? So therefore, let us not forget that making disciples is actually the more important thing. So the Great Commission makes all believers witnesses and messengers of the gospel. These opportunities could be in our places of work, school, or casual encounters with people we meet along the way. It is not to say that we share our testimony with just anybody, okay? It's not saying that. We need to be careful that we are not offensive in our ways. Rather, we need to be confident to share our life and story with others when the time and place is right. It is fair to assume these opportunities to share our testimony will definitely come. So we need to be ready. We need to be intentional in leading others to Jesus and become His learners and disciples also. The core essence of the Great Commission is discipleship. Jesus wants His disciples to become disciple makers themselves. He commands them to continue the process of discipleship and duplicate themselves in others throughout generations. The disciples could not have fully fulfilled the Great Commission, but right now it is continuing. That's why we as Filipinos also believe in it. Now let's go to verse 19 now. Baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. The word baptize can be understood specifically to mean the baptism ceremony that symbolizes the renouncing one's life of sin to a new life of faith in the Trinity that the new believer embraces. We can certainly agree with that. Okay? In the broader context of the Great Commission, baptism here is the immersion into the kingdom life of God. It is bringing people into the loving relationship of the family of God. So it's not just a ceremony, because you can go through the ceremony and not have a relationship with God. Okay? You can have a relationship with God even if you may not have gone through the ceremony of baptism. But what is more important is that the believer, the new believer, has this loving relationship. He experiences, or she experiences that. Okay? So we bring people into that relationship. Discipleship then is having a relationship with Jesus Christ in the same way that the original 12 disciples had a relationship with Him and with each other. Making sure that relationship is present comprises what discipleship truly is. There is friendship in the relationship, remember? Si Jesus Christ sa kamangaan niya. So discipleship also means friendship. There was fellowship. There also needs to be fellowship with Jesus Christ. And there is also a high level of trust built into one's relationship with Jesus. If a person comes to that point that he can really trust God, whether he's baptized or not, he has been baptized into the relationship with God. I'm not minimizing the importance of baptism, but we have to recognize it's not the ceremony, it is the relationship. Verse 20 now, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. What is Jesus saying here? He's saying that the Great Commission includes what? The aspect of grounding new believers in the life and teachings of Jesus in order to follow Him more intimately. Again, it is a relationship. The Sermon on the Mount is a clear example of the teachings of Jesus that demonstrates the deep wisdom and goodness of God. The many parables also illustrate the righteous and loving character of God towards His people. It is important then for us to base our teachings on the Bible. Another is the teaching on the cost of discipleship that requires one to pursue nothing and no one above Jesus. At times, one's life may be placed in danger out of obedience. But this is real Christianity. Real Christianity, to be honest with our new believers, is not going to be easy. It moves us out of our comfort zone and challenges us to prioritize and strive endlessly to what is important, and that is Jesus Christ. A disciple has to change for God and conform to Him. It is not the other way around. I've heard people who say, you know what, I don't like that religion. I like a religion that I can feel comfortable in. I like a religion that will make me able to do what I like to do. You know, I heard these comments. What those comments are telling me is that they don't like a God to obey, to transform them, but rather they want a God that they can create in their own image or conforms to their image. Christianity is very different. No. That's why Christianity is difficult, because it is us who must conform. It is us who must change. And change is very often painful, as it often requires what? Relinquishing what is important to us, our desires, our attachments, our belongings, our some relationships that are not important or are holding us back from having an intimate relationship with Christ. That's why Christianity is difficult. Discipleship is difficult. That is why total obedience is necessary, for in obedience, the new believer becomes more like Jesus. Discipleship or disciples are defined as what? Learners, okay, students. We can also define them as followers of Jesus. But maybe the better term for what a disciple is someone who acts and lives like Jesus. That is a true disciple. More and more, the image of Jesus becomes visible in our lifestyle. More and more, we think the way He thinks. More and more, we act the way He acts. That's why it is important to teach. It is important for us to be taught also continually to obey everything I have commanded you. Lastly, and surely I'm with you always to the very end of the age. What is this? What is this? It's assurance. Verse 18, remember, is an assurance of success. This one also is assurance of Jesus' constant guidance and presence. It is a promise of His continuing presence with us. That's why discipleship will succeed. Okay? It will succeed. There is nothing more comforting than to know that in this difficult mission to make disciples, Jesus has clearly promised that He will never abandon us. That means even when we make foul-ups, even when we make mistakes, even when sometimes our motivations are selfish, even when we sort of have made disciples, but actually our own agenda has become the priority, God will never abandon us. God will correct us. God will lead us. Isn't that comforting that even if we make mistakes, even if we don't succeed, God will never give up on us. He will be there to teach us so that we can learn from our mistakes. He will never separate Himself from us. Not for one moment. In fact, it says here,
Surely.
always to the very end of the age. Or in our case, to the very end of our age. Or, whenever that time will be. Not everyone, let me also make it clear, that not everyone we share the gospel with will believe. Okay? I think it is fair enough to assume that not everybody will believe. That's just the way things are. But there will be those who will believe and become disciple makers themselves. Jesus will lead us to them, or they will be led to us one way or another, because He's the one responsible. We obey because it's already laid out for us. Parang sabi, o sige, punta ka sa bundok na yan. And as you go, makikita ko, may daan na pala dito. Meron na palang direction dito. Uy, meron palang, pahingaan dito. May tubig pala dito. And somehow in our going, we realize that we didn't make the path, but Christ has made it all possible to make us successful in doing this mission. Now, how do we apply this discipleship mission? Or how do we become a discipler? Here is a very important point, and I think this is a condition that has to be present before we can become a disciple. We become a discipler, we become a discipler by first being a disciple. I know that sounds a little bit, I know that, yeah. But I'm just stressing that point because being a disciple is not just a one-time event. We have to continue learning. We have to continue growing. We have to continually be taught also. Okay? Even teachers, even professionals who have been in their field for so long, they still have what we call the continuing education program, things like that. We also need to have that. So we need to be a disciple first, to be a disciple. This is a non-negotiable condition. We cannot share what we do not have. If we do not have a relationship with Jesus, we cannot bring that to others, and we cannot bring that person into a relationship with Jesus Christ either. So how do we fulfill the Great Commission in this time and age? I'm asking the same question also. Well, there's no one formula. Unfortunately, we're the type of people who like, give me a program, how to make disciples. How do I do it? There's no one formula. There are lots of books out there that you can read on evangelism, mission, and things like that. There's so many. But what I can say here is that this command of discipleship depends very much on our individual context. So if I look at myself, my context is very different from yours. In your context, in your work, your friends, your opportunities are very different. So how we do it is not so important as what is important, as what are the elements that have to be present, which is primarily we have to be a disciple first. We have to have a relationship with Jesus Christ. We have to make sure that our discipleship is about bringing them into that relationship with Jesus Christ. And when the time comes, when the time is right, we can begin teaching, okay, how those opportunities arise. It's up to you to discern. Okay? So there's no one formula. And I'm sorry to say I have no suggestion to tell you, except maybe some elements that have to be present. For example, establish friendships. It's hard to be... Imagine kung tayo po ang nilalapitan ng somebody we don't know, especially in this time and age. Lapitan mo isang tao, biglang, uy, mayroon akong yara sa'yo. Hindi pa parang they will be guarded. You know? Matatakot yan. So I think we need to be also sensitive. However, if we have this friendship, if we know that person, there is trust that is built within that relationship with them, then it's easier to share. Magkukwento ka ba ng buhay mo sa isang tao hindi mo kilala? At kung mayroon kang isang tao na hindi mo kilala at mag-share sa iyo ng kanyang buhay din, anong iisipin mo? Diba? You will be guarded. So maybe we can start by looking at our own individual and collective situations. What doors are open in terms of new friendships? In the community, even in the church. Let's not assume that everybody in our church is a disciple of Jesus Christ. Maybe our opportunities is probably getting to know your seatmate. Maybe just, share a meal. And once you find common interest, and that's where you probably share a little bit of your own testimonies. Establish friendship first to build trust. Also, number 2 is share your life's experiences. You cannot share another person's testimony and sort of, ito yung sinabi ng aking kapatid sa simbahan, ito yung nangyari sa kanya. Ibang-iba yun kaysa ikaw mismo magsasabi, ganito ang pinagdaanan ko. Look at your life. Let's look at our lives. How has God worked with us? frankly, ako parang kung minsan hindi ko tinitingnan na sarili ko as an extravagant. But there are opportunities in which, for some reason, I'm able to pray for someone. I'm able to empathize with them, maybe share my own experiences. But the reason I can be comfortable in doing this is because I know my life. You know, I know that God has worked with me, and I can share with you my experiences because I know my life in and out. And also, let us be humble. Ito ang problema kasi ng marami na nakikita ko is that they act as if they know a lot about the Bible. They come to you with verses and verses and verses, well memorized. They can show you, they can turn to the pages. Itong sinasabi ng Bible, itong sinasabi ng Bible, and all that. But, isa yun, ano? Pero kung minsan, hindi lang yun eh. They have a certain air, certain persona or aura, na minsan, parang wala kang alam. So, and that turns people off. That turns me off when somebody approaches me like that. So avoid coming across as a know-it-all teacher. Even in our church, when we teach, let us be careful about the words we use, how we sound. We may not be aware of it, but sometimes, just by the way we look, tapang tayo. Just by the tone of our voice, galit tayo. Just by our, the way we answer a question, parang tayo lang nakakaalam. So let us be humble. Avoid coming across as a know-it-all great teacher. Be humble even though you may be a great teacher. So I like to say this as a kind of a, as a reminder also. Let us be clear that discipleship is not a program. It is primarily a relationship that is centered on Christ. Diba sa din ang reminder ni Dr. Pizarro kanina. It is a lifestyle of leading others towards an intimate and vibrant relationship with Him. Sometimes we are lights in that we show the way. Sometimes we are the hand that guides them. Sometimes we are the people that holds them until they become mature. But let us be intentional about this. Discipleship for us people, for us as a church, is not an option. It's something of an obligation. It is an obligation. So in conclusion, we have seen from the scriptures how important discipleship is to Jesus, and that just before His ascension to heaven, He gave this as His final instruction. It is the discipleship commission. We have seen that Jesus wants the disciples to become discipler makers themselves, perpetuating the process so other people would also love Jesus and have a personal relationship with Him. We are here. We believe today we are a church because others have chosen to obey and disciple us. In the final analysis, discipleship is really about relationship with Jesus. It is His life we have to imitate. It is His character we have to have ourselves. It is His life we need to have in us so that we can become more like Him every day. And just like what John said, John the Baptist said, He must increase, I must decrease. So hopefully that will happen. The challenge to reach other people is no easy task. Thankfully, Jesus covers us with His authority, and He blesses us with His promise of constant presence and guidance. Therefore, when we think about our obligation for discipleship, we will succeed and we will not fail. Let us read together then the commandment or the great discipleship mission or the discipleship mission. And I've changed it from the perspective of Jesus speaking to us marching on forward. So together, let's all read this. Let us therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything Jesus has commanded us. And surely He will be with us always to the very end.